stencils. Probably most of you have some in your stash. Maybe you use them or maybe you just collect them. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some of the top reasons why I think stencils are the perfect crafty tool to have in your stash and some fun ways to use them. Hey crafty friends, this is Chelsea and I'm a stencil collector. Not hoarder, collector. I love all sizes, brands, and styles of stencils. One of my favorite things about stencils is that they take up such little space. So I have a ton of them in my binder system here. I have Project Life pocket pages that have 6x6 pockets and then 12x12 regular page protectors as well. And it works so good to keep all my different sizes together. I also love things like this. This is a new embossing folder from Close to My Heart, and it comes with layered stencils. So you can do different parts of the design in different colors super fast and easy. Along the same line, stamps like this that have coordinating layering stencils so you can easily color up an image without having to shade with markers. It just saves a lot of time. This one I'm showing you is retired, but hopefully we will have more of those coming out soon. Now, the stencils that I want to use today are a little bit different. They are background builders. They could be kind of like a layering stencil, but I call them a background builder because you're building a pattern, and most of the time you're using that as your background. So there are the A2 size and there are Slimline size, and you can do them as stripes, or you can also flip them over and create a plaid. We'll be doing both of those today. There's also these quadrant background builder sets, and all this is part of the Say It with Style special that's going on for September and October. This is one of the cards that I have made. You can see I did stripes here. This is that quadrant background. It's really hard to describe unless you see it. Both these cards are part of something super special that I'm offering during September. So stick around till a little bit later in the video and I will tell you more about that. For now, I'm going to start putting out my all-purpose mat so that we can jump into the 2 Slimline cards that we're going to be making. I've made about 8 cards so far with this set, and I am not done yet. I still have ideas. So I'm using a little bit of my tape runner just to secure this panel down onto my mat so it's not sliding around on me. And then I'm going to grab the stencils here. So I'm trying to figure out which one I should do first, which ones I'm going to do in what color. I'm going to start with the thinner stripes first, and I'm going to washi tape it into place. Now my white piece of paper is 3.5 inches by 8.5. So that's pretty much the max size that you can fit in this Slimline stencil. So you want to make sure you really take your time and carefully line it up, making sure those stripes are going right to the edge so you don't end up with like weird cut off edges and like little white pieces still showing when you're all done. I am going to edit out a lot of the me lining up the stencils because I was pretty meticulous about it and my head was in the way most of the time. And this could probably be a theme of this video, Chelsea's head being in the way. I am going to have to cut out a lot of places where you're just looking at the back of my head. So I'm starting off with the Candied Apple Distress Oxide ink. I love how you get really solid coverage with these inks. And it's going to play a very important role on the second card. So make sure you stick around to watch that because I'm using it for a very specific reason. On this one, I just love the color. I love how opaque it is. You get really good coverage. I like using it with the inking tool, the mini ink blending tool, more than using a blending brush. One, it just covers faster. I can move a lot faster and you just get complete solid coverage, which is what I was looking for. I didn't want like a really blended or kind of fading in and out look. I just wanted solid color because I'm going to go for a candy cane stripe. So when I was making that other card I was telling you about that had the blue and green stripes, I thought, man, how good would this look as a Christmas card with a candy cane type theme, like a candy cane stripe. So that's what I'm doing here. I went ahead and washed my stencil. I've lined up the one that has the wider stripes, and I'm using linen ink, which is just a super light gray ink, just a regular dye ink from Close to My Heart. And I'm starting on the stencil and blending inwards just a little bit. So basically I'm adding a shadow. So usually when you're coloring something that's white, you want to still add some shadow to create dimension. So because I wanted this to be white, I thought it'd be cool to add a little shadow to it. So that's what I'm doing with this ink, and I'm not coming in all the way. It's hard to tell from the video how far I am coming in, but I'm keeping most of the color right along the edge of that stencil, and then it fades in just a little bit. Now, if you were doing this with a darker gray ink, it might be a little bit harder to handle, but this is a very light gray. If you don't want to take the time to do this step, you could definitely skip it. It's not essential because I am going to add another layer over this. Now, the second layer I'm going to add is going to add some shimmer. So if you don't want to do that, you want to keep like an all matte look, you could do just this part and not add anything else. I think I'm pretty happy with what I have, but I'm just going to lift the stencil a little bit, peek underneath, and make sure it's dark enough. I like it, I'm happy with it, but I don't want to move my stencil yet. I'm going to bring in the white opal in the liquid pearls, and I realized as I was doing this, I really need to refill my stash of liquid pearls before Christmas comes because I am squeezing the last little bit out of this bottle. So I'm just squeezing onto my mat. I have a foam pad on my ink blending tool, and then I'm just pouncing it on there. Now, for some reason, it was a clean little applicator that I grabbed, but there was some kind of like little fuzzies in there. So you'll see me kind of going in and like kind of trying to rub those little fuzzies off. I'm not sure where they came from, but they got in there. I'm just going to keep going over this, pouncing. I love that the liquid pearls go on super thin and they don't warp your paper or anything like that, but give you a nice metallic finish. So I'll just keep adding those until I'm happy. And then here is the peel and reveal, the best part. Now it's a little bit anticlimactic until I move it into the light. So then you can see that really pretty white pearl finish. I think this would be really fun to do with some colors of liquid pearls as well, and maybe even on some dark colored cardstocks. This is the Slimline Shaker Window Thin Cut. This is exactly the size of my paper. I wanted to add some detail to this and also cut up my background into a couple of panels just to make it a little bit more interesting. So I used washi tape to attach my paper to there so that it wasn't sliding around. I had no wiggle room. It was exactly the right size. And then just peeling that out, you can see it has a beautiful stitched edge, nice and thick because this is meant for creating shakers. So I could save that middle piece for another card and create a shaker with this, but instead I'm going to use this kind of scalloped panel to cut out that middle piece. I'm going to do the same thing with the washi tape because I don't have a lot of wiggle room and I want this to cut straight because this is going to match up with the middle piece. Now I did some other die cutting while I was off camera. I have a piece of evergreen cardstock here and I'm going to use the dark side. And this is just slightly smaller than my card base, just so I didn't have to worry about it hanging over the edge. So I'm putting that down flat with some adhesive. And I sped through me trying to peel off the washi tape from the back of that die cut, so you didn't have to watch that painful process. And now I'm going to put this frame down flat. I debated popping it up, but I decided to go for popping up the middle part. Now I had to get my head right over there so that I could see what I was doing because there's not a lot of wiggle room. It fits exactly to the card, so I just had to get right over top of it and make sure I was getting to the edges. Now I cut out 4 more of these little scallop pieces for the middle. Rather than using foam tape, I could definitely use foam tape, but instead I decided to stack cardstock. This makes my card super sturdy and I can be sure that I'm not going to have any sagging in the center or anything because pieces that large take a lot of foam tape to pop up. So I got all of those stuck together. I'm just using my ATG adhesive to stick it down. You want to make sure you line up those stripes when you're doing that. And now I have this Merry Christmas thin cut. This is an older one, but it is still available on the website. All the dies I'm using today, even though some of them are older, they're all still available. So I'll make sure to link everything down below as of the time of filming this. You should be able to find all of them on my website. So I went ahead and cut the base Christmas from Jade cardstock, and then I'm using Jade ink just to ink blend the bottom and add a little bit of dimension. Nothing crazy, it just felt like it needed something. Now I'm using my Barely Art glue and the super fine tip to go in and start gluing. Now I'm still pretty new to this glue, so I wanted to see how it worked for this, and it was great. It was perfect for these tiny little details, but I wasn't sure how long it would stay wet for because I'm still fairly new to using it. So I just did half of the word, stuck it down, and then I'm just going to pull up the other half and just put glue on the rest of it. And that way I know it's lined up. It's easier, I think, than having glue on the whole backside. You try to get it down before it starts drying. It's not straight, right? That sounds stressful. We don't want stressful. So I'm doing it this way. It worked really well. And this outline is actually cut from pine glitter paper. And even though I have no pine on the rest of my card, it's kind of a multi-dimensional glitter paper. So it has like some silver and stuff in it. And it worked perfectly for this. I also glued down the little center of the A and the R so that everything is complete. You want to make sure you save those pieces if you're die cutting this. I think that looks so good. That Mary also comes in the die set, and I cut about 5 of them and stacked them on top of each other. Now I have this bow thin cut. I've cut it from Candy Apple UV coated cardstock. So that was a special a while ago with Close to My Heart. And so I thought this would be really pretty, something simple to embellish my card. I debated on all different kinds of things, but I settled on this to really pop that red. It's red and glossy, and it keeps the card fairly simple but adds extra detail. The glue worked good for sticking these 2 pieces down to the back side of that bow because the back side is like regular finished cardstock. But then when I went to go and glue this onto this base piece, it did not go so well. So I had to switch over to some glue dots in order to get it to stick. You can see I trimmed off that little piece. That little piece is supposed to wrap around and be the center of the bow, but it would show the reverse side. And since the reverse side is not glossy, I decided to go ahead and cut myself a little strip so I could create my own bow center. I used several glue dots just to make sure this was stuck down good. It was not going to come undone with that glossy finish on there, and the glue dots held really well. So here is my finished bow. Isn't that just adorable? So I just glued everything down into place, and here is that finished card. Super simple looking, just like bright and happy and kind of a graphic Christmas look. And because I use stencils for that background, it is super reproducible. I could do this again and again and get the same results and have identical cards. And I'm not going to run out of pattern paper because I'm basically creating my own. Earlier in the video, I promised I would talk about the Say It With Style special and my extra bonus that I'm offering in September. So this comes with the stencils that you see here and then all of these stamp and die sets. All that kind of like mint colored, that shows that there's coordinating dies. So these sets have a ton of dies, really good sentiments, icons, different sizes of sentiments, and I love how they cut out all that detail. Now I've gone ahead and made 8 cards and 2 double page layouts. So if you buy either one of the bundles, so there's a product bundle and a workshop bundle. If you buy either of those from me during the month of September, you will get the sketches to create those projects as well as full video classes where I walk you through step by step making those projects. I will have those bundles linked down in the description for you. And now we are going to jump into the second card. I'm working with the same size White Daisy panel, the 3.5 by 8.5 White Daisy cardstock, and we are starting with the wide stripe this time because we are going to do a plaid. So earlier I told you there was a specific reason why I wanted to use the Distress Oxide ink along with my Close to My Heart die inks, and you're going to see that on this card. So I'm starting off with the Jade ink, and I am just applying a super heavy coat. I could have probably used an ink blending tool instead of my blending brush, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to give it a pretty solid coverage of ink and get it fairly dark. Now my thought was I want to do a red and green plaid. Now the problem with that is if I do red and green dye inks, when they overlap, you're going to get like a muddy color, a brownish color, because they are complementary colors, which means they're across from each other on the color wheel, and when they mix together, they don't make pretty things. That's true for all complementary colors. They look really good side by side, but not necessarily mixed in. Now here's the reveal of that first layer. Oh, such a beautiful color. So I washed my stencil, made sure it was dry, flipped it over so that the stripes would be going the other direction, and now I'm using evergreen ink, which is an even darker green. These colors actually look really beautiful together, and I am doing the exact same thing except going the other direction. And because I'm using stencils to do this instead of masking, I know my results are going to be consistent every time. The stripes are all the same width, and it's easy enough that anybody can do it. You can do it as a beginner and get a lot of success right off the bat and have a quick win. There's some things in crafting where you really need to build your skill set, things like stamping and coloring, but stenciling isn't one of those things. Everybody can do it. In fact, I even picked up some stencils from the dollar store for my daughter, and she has started stenciling. Since she's only 3, she needs that thicker plastic, but even for kids that are a little bit older, you could definitely use these kinds of stencils with them, and I think they would love it. Now I have moved on to the red, and this is why I'm using the Distress Oxide ink. It is part dye ink and part pigment ink. And if you think about it like this, dye seeps in and dyes the fibers of your paper, whereas pigment sits on top like paint and kind of gives you like a top coat. So you can actually put it on darker colors. You can layer it a little bit more. And so that is the cool property of oxide inks. They are part dye and part pigment ink. And so now you can see as I put on like a super heavy coat, when it crosses over the green, you don't get like a weird brown color or a muddy color. It still stays red. Yes, it looks a little bit darker because these aren't fully opaque. They are partially transparent, but there is the completed background. Doesn't that look so cool? I love how that turned out. I didn't show it on camera, but make sure you always wash your stencil before you flip it over and give it a dry so you don't get ink transfer. Now I knew I wanted to die cut my plaid panel. I had the square windows and the circle windows, slimline dies, and I decided to go with the circles. I kind of debated between the two of them. When I flipped this piece over, I noticed that my paper wasn't quite as long as it should have been. It was just slightly under the 8.5 inches. So I did tape the die into place. I went ahead and cut it, and then I actually took my trimmer and trimmed down all the sides to match the one side that was short so that the stitching around it was even. Then I cut a piece of gold glitter paper. And the best thing to adhere glitter paper to things with is glue dots. So I'm putting glue dots on the back side of my plaid piece that's die cut because I want the gold to show through the windows. And I could have cut this down to be like little squares behind those windows, but I figured by the time I did that, I'd be using almost the same amount of glitter paper, so I just left it in one strip. There's so many things you could do behind those little windows. You could pop your piece up and have the glitter paper kind of farther away, but I decided just to stick them flat, and then I'm using my ATG to put it onto my card base. Now remember, I went ahead and trimmed this down, and I am using the Close to My Heart Slimline card bases, so they are a set size. So I put it on to the top left corner so that I could go ahead with my trimmer and cut off that excess of the white where I had made my piece smaller. I thought maybe of using this holiday banner set. I thought the poinsettias would look really nice with it, and it's a new set. I haven't gotten to use it yet, so I was kind of anxious to dig it out and play with it and color it up. So I really debated using it on this card. I think it would have worked really good, but I decided to go a different direction. Now, unfortunately, with me waffling back and forth trying to decide what stamps to use, I didn't show you the stamp I did end up using, which is the Home for Christmas Scrapbooking Stamp and Thin Cut set. It has these really cool layered presents. So you stamp the base, which kind of looks like you did a bad job stamping, but they're supposed to look like that. I did the base in candy apple and then the detail layer in scarlet. And then I cut out the die cut bow that matches this set with white glitter paper. I love that they mix the die cuts with the stamping. So on this little piece here, I actually used limeade for the base, and then I used jade for the detail layer. And then I cut my bow from scarlet glitter paper. For this one, I used jade as the base and then evergreen as the detail. And I love how these stamps were really well designed. So when you stamp the detail layer, it kind of looks like you missed some or the design isn't complete. But what they did was leave little gaps where the ribbons are supposed to go. So it really helps. You can see it really good on the red one. It really helps you to line up those bows in the exact place they're supposed to be because there's actually gaps in the stamping to show you where that line is. I think having the die cut bows is so smart because then you can mix up what you're cutting out. And rather than trying to stamp a bow with these like really skinny lines, having a die cut is just a great idea. Plus, the more glitter paper I can use, the happier I am. And of course, there is matching dies to cut out like the outline of the presents as well. And there are some couple really nice large sentiments in this set, which I am not using, but I will be using on future projects because I know I'm going to get some mileage out of this set. I'm just setting my presents in those circles, kind of where I think they're going to go. And then I decided I needed something else. So I grabbed this Home for Christmas card making workshop. So this only comes in the card workshop. And what drew me to it were these little sprigs. Now, I got a set last year with the card making workshop, the Christmas one, but I ended up cutting off the long ends that were on it every time I was using it because I just wanted little sprigs poking out here and there. So I debated not buying this set because I'm like, well, I have a set from last year that has little sprigs, but I'm so glad I got this one. They are the perfect little detail to add to clusters of embellishments, die cut embellishments, stamped embellishments, just that little touch of glitter. I cut these ones out of the pine glitter paper, and they were the perfect accent to just fill it in a little bit, but not add too much. Next, I wanted to work on my sentiment piece, so I stamped the outline in black. There is a solid part for this banner, so you could stamp it in a color, but I wanted to keep it really light, so I used my brown-gray tri-blend marker and just added really light shading and blended it out with a colorless blender. Then I used Candy Apple and stamped Merry Christmas. I love that this set has several different sentiments that fit that curve of that banner, and I think I will get a lot of use out of this one as well, since I can switch it up with different sentiments, fill it in with different colors. It's just a really good one. Since my background is pretty flat, I'm going to add all my elements with foam tape. So I have some thick foam tape on my sentiment, on the red present, and on the green present, and that little small green present, I'm going to use thin foam tape so I get a couple different heights. Now, if you guys like Christmas cards, if you're ready to go all in on Christmas cards, 31 days of Christmas cards with the Creative Design team just opened today for registration. So make sure you grab the coupon code in my description for early bird pricing. And if you want to watch more card videos, click right here. You can check out some Christmas in July goodness as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.